Good day, everyone. My name is Will.I.am plus S. In our today's class, we shall be completing our calculation on micrometer, screw gauge, and vernier caliper measurement. So on this vernier caliper, we are going to solve few questions that will go to how we can calculate reading on a micrometer screw gauge. So the question we have here want us to calculate the reading on this above caliper. So if you look at this caliper, here is 1 and here is 2 centimeter. So in between should be the midpoint. So here should be 1.5. So here is 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. So how do you read it off? In our previous video, I told you the point on the vernier scale after which the point on the main scale after which the vernier scale branch off is the main scale reading. So at this particular place now we're having 1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. So immediately after 1.3, vernier scale branch off. So 1.3 becomes our main scale reading. So main scale reading is equal to 1.3 in centimeter. Then the vernier scale reading is the calibration here. You count the calibration here and stop at the point where the main scale and the vernier scale coincide, which is this particular point. So I'm having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So the main scale and the vernier scale coincides at 9. So 9 millimeter becomes our vernier scale readings, but we have to multiply with the accuracy, which is 0.01 in centimeter, which will give us 0.09 centimeter. So the total reading here will give us the main scale reading plus the vernier scale reading, which will be 1.3 plus 0.09, which will be equal to 1.39 centimeter. That is the reading on this caliper, and the correct option here is option C. The next question, still on caliper, we are to look for the reading on this vernier caliper. The same thing we did in the previous example we are still going to do here. So here we have 2. So if here is 2, the calibration before 2 will be 1.9. So here will be 1.8. So our main scale reading will be equal to 1.8 in centimeter. Then how do you get the vernier? The same point of coincidence, or where they intercept. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is where they intersect. So vernier scale is equal to 8 times 0.01, which will be equal to 0.08. So that the total will be equal to 1.8 plus 0.08, which will be equal to 1.88 centimeter. That is the reading on this particular vernier caliper. That is all on caliper. The next instrument we discuss now is micrometer screw gauge. Micrometer screw gauge. We can use micrometer screw gauge to measure tiny objects like the thickness of a sheet of paper, that is paper. We can use micrometer screw gauge to measure the thickness of a metal sheet of metal. You can also use to measure the thickness of or the diameter of a fine wire. So that is what we can use micrometer screw gauge to do. And it has a lot of parts, but the most important part of a micrometer screw gauge is the sleeve and the thimble. Let me just give you a typical example of some portion of a micrometer screw gauge. So micrometer screw gauge, some portion of micrometer screw gauge looks just like this. So here is the thimble, and here is the sleeve. So what do? When you calculate the sleeve reading, add it to the thimble reading, you get the total reading on a micrometer screw gauge. But remember that the accuracy of a micrometer screw gauge is 0.01 millimeter. Don't forget that. So let's take an example. So let's say we are to calculate the reading on this micrometer screw gauge. We have to look for the reading on this micrometer screw gauge. So we have so that's our micrometer screw gauge. So we are required to calculate the reading on this micrometer screw gauge. So what do? Remember, this is the sleeve and this is the thimble. We are going to look for the sleeve reading and also the thimble reading. So when we do that, we add it up to get the total reading. So here is already given to us as 0 millimeter. So after 0 millimeter, the next thing we're going to have is 1. So here is 1 and here is 2. Then in between 0 and 1, here should be 0.5, 1, 1.5, then 2. Then if there's another calibration here, we can call it a 2.5. But the calibration stops exactly at 2. So 2 is the sleeve reading. 2 in millimeter is the sleeve reading. Then how do we get the thimble reading? The point where the sleeve coincides with the thimble is our thimble reading. You can see it here, which is at 20. So we have 20 here, multiplied by the accuracy, which is 0.01 millimeter, which will now give us 0.20 millimeter. So the total reading on this micrometer screw gauge will now be 2 plus 0.20 millimeter, which will be equal to 2.20 millimeter. That is the reading on this micrometer screw gauge. The next, let me take another example. So let's assume you are to look for the reading on this micrometer screw gauge. So we are to look for the reading on this micrometer screw gauge. So what do? We are going to get the sleeve reading and also the thimble reading. So the sleeve reading will now be, here is 0, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5. So the calibration stops at 2.5. So 2.5 becomes the sleeve reading. Whereas the thimble reading will be equal to where they coincide, which should be at 16, though no number was written there, but after 50, the next digit you should get here is 16 before 17. So I have 16 centimeter multiplied by 0.01, which will be equal to 0.16 millimeter. So if I add 2.5 to 0.16 millimeter, I'm going to have 2.66 millimeter. That is the reading on this particular vernier micrometer screw gauge. I believe you understand today's class. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. See you in our next video.